Good morning, everyone. This is Roger Miller, Solution Consultant with WorkWise. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today, Tips for Managing Your Documents from Anywhere. This is a pretty popular topic based on the number of folks who signed up, and delighted to let you know we've got customers on the line and signed up from Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Kansas, Michigan, apparently a snowy Minnesota, New York, Ohio, Texas, and Wisconsin, including some northern Wisconsin customers with snow, which is pretty incredible here at the end of October. So I'd like to introduce our presenter, Jim Van Hecke. He's president of Dash Development, a longtime business partner of WorkWise. Jim and I go back, gosh, what is it now, Jim? At least over 30 years. And I'm delighted he's going to be able to share with you some tips and techniques in how to really leverage the document management capabilities of Dash and Dash DDX products. This is a pretty popular topic. Of course, everyone is dealing with our pandemic throughout the year, this year, and many of our customers are working remotely, and that, of course, puts even more emphasis on the need to go paperless and the advantages of eliminating paper, which were already there before the pandemic, but I think it really accentuates that need even more greatly. So one final comment, and that is just to set an expectation around our topics for today. We're presuming that all the customers on the line are already familiar and productive in using the baseline, if I can use that term, Dash applications of the Dash router to send documents to customers and vendors automatically, and the Dash archive in order to retrieve those documents. And that's kind of the starting point for Dash. I'm delighted to turn things over to Jim because he's going to take it from there and tell you all the other capabilities that you may or may not be aware of in terms of extending the functionality of Dash DDX. So, Jim, take it over.
Thanks, Roger. For those of you that are interested in just kind of an overview presentation of the product, kind of high-level stuff, we'll talk about where you can get that later in the presentation. This is really kind of a smattering of tips and techniques and features and things that you can use to improve the effectiveness of your organization. To that end, we're going to talk a little bit about form recognition and some of the options that we have there to expand the use of DDX into other nooks and crannies of your company. We'll talk about the web viewer and maybe how to automate some of the search and lookup using that web viewer. We're going to talk about workflow in DDX and give you a little example and explain how that works and how maybe you can take advantage of it in some areas in your company. We'll talk about a feature that allows you to check out a document, make changes to it, check it back in as a new revision very simply and easily. We're going to look at how you staple documents together. Really, it's in DDX called linking, but it's the equivalent of stapling things together, only better than staples. And we'll talk a little bit about custom tailoring things and then maybe a smattering of other tips as we get towards the end, so we make good and best use of your time. So without further ado, let's get right into the first thing here and talk about form recognition in DDX. This is a module called DDX-Port. It's an add-on module, not normally part of the base system, but it's easily added for a variety of reasons. We've done some benchmarks on DDX and discovered that in the real world at our customers, it's not uncommon. In fact, it's far more common than not for our customers to be able to sift through hundreds of thousands or even millions of documents and have that one invoice that they're looking for up and visible on their screen in a second or two, right? So it's really, really quick and convenient from that perspective. That works great, but in order to get to that point, you got to be able to capture documents, right? And WorkWise is already integrated to capture a bunch of things that come out of it, but you've got some other opportunities to capture documents that come from other places. We're going to focus primarily at the moment anyways on the form recognition module, where you can train DDX to recognize a form and then you just print it to DDX and DDX kind of knows what to do with it because of the way you trained it. There's no modifications, and it works with almost any other print program. It is not limited to the things that are being produced out of the WorkWise ERP system. It could be used for all sorts of different things. You also if you're at that base level we talked about earlier, you have a tool called the DDX.Publisher that lets you archive almost any kind of file that you wish. You can classify it and put it away, and now it's kept in the DDX archive. So that's there and available for you. And we also have a programmer's interface that if you want to know more, you're a programmer, you have programmers that would like to mimic the type of integration that you see with WorkWise ERP in other places in your company, let us know. We're happy to share the documentation and what we can about that aspect of the product. So DDXport, the form recognition engine, it works a lot like human beings do, right? If I took this document and I threw it on your desk, you'd have a hard time figuring out exactly what it is you're looking for, aside from the Latin in the lower right corner. What us human beings do is we put this information on a form. So we know by looking at the form and the various specific locations on the form, we can put all this stuff into context and know what we're looking at. Well, DDXport does exactly the same thing. It looks at various positions on the form to first determine what is this, right? In this case, that little location up at the top right of the form tells me it's a certification report. And maybe because I've trained DDX previously to recognize certification reports, it now knows what to do with it. It can follow certain rules, like looking at other locations on the form to pick up other information like the customer name or the part number, certification date, and so on and so forth. All of those things are accessible to DDXport to pluck off that page and use for keywords or for other things, should you wish. Now, oftentimes, what's on the printed page isn't enough to provide DDX with all the instructions you might want to give it. So DDX can use that stuff from the page, like the customer number, to reach to a database, one or more databases elsewhere, to grab additional information. That database could be the WorkWise ERP database, or it could be some other database as well. Now DDX has a range of options at its fingertips to go grab information, to assemble all the instructions to tell it how to archive it, what keywords to use, if we should archive it, should we fax it, print it, email it, so on and so forth. All that stuff and that type of automation that you see with the WorkWise ERP system can also be accomplished using this form recognition engine and a few additional things. Now, the cool parts of this is it's really pretty easy for the user to use, right? They just print to DDXport and they're good to go. It's very flexible, can be used in a lot of different places for a lot of different systems. Again, for forms and reports maybe that you produce out of WorkWise ERP that aren't already DDX enabled, but also from other systems as well. Very accurate, right? And it works for almost any kind of a form that you print with zero modifications to the thing doing the printing. Now, there's some caveats here you need to be aware of about when and where it's appropriate to think of using DDXport. First of all, the data needs to be in predictable positions on the page. We talk about locations, and really it's a zonal recognition. So you can't have that customer number wandering around in different positions and different iterations of that form. The input for DDXport is searchable PDF. So it needs to be able to read the text from the screen. It does not in and of itself do OCR, but if you are dealing with scanned documents, OCR software is commercially available on the market. It's really pretty good and pretty cheap that you can front end this all with. So you can use DDXport to integrate with other systems, whether it's WorkWise ERP, Crystal Reports, SSRS, forms that you're spitting out of Word or Excel or other places. All of those are good fodder for the form recognition engine, and it can be used for forms that you're producing in-house or that you receive from the outside, like supplier invoices or customer POs, etc. All of those things are legal. Now, one additional note here is you get a little bonus when you get the form recognition engine. When I mentioned earlier that you can simply print to the DDX port, that's because the module comes with a print driver called the Dash DDX printer. And when you install that on your system, and I'm printing a form from someplace, I can just print to that printer, or I can save as a PDF into a watch directory on my network and accomplish the same thing. But the bonus here is if I've got things that aren't normally recognized, like an email, right? This is not a form. Things aren't in predictable positions. So it's kind of free form, if you will. I can print something to the DDX printer and it pops up and says, I can't recognize that particular form. And it gives me the option to save it as a PDF, to print it, or to publish it. And if I were to choose to publish it, it converts it to a PDF. It launches the DDX.Publisher, focuses in on that one individual document. And now I can fill in the keywords in the publisher and save a copy of this into my archive. So it becomes a really convenient way for me to grab all sorts of things that I might want to archive, some of which could be automatically recognized. Others I can use the publisher to classify and put away pretty easily without ever having to print it to paper and scan it back in. We do, in fact, have some users that have purchased the form recognition module just for that purpose, and they aren't really using it to recognize forms, but these are some of the options or array of options at your disposal. Let's talk a little bit about the DDX.Publisher, because I mentioned that as a means of being able to file and classify almost any kind of a file that you wish. This is something that you all have. So you have the ability today to take any electronic documents you have or scanned documents that you have, apply some keywords to them and put them into the archive alongside the documents that are being siphoned off and captured automatically from the WorkWise ERP system. You can archive any file, you can add those keywords. It's all subject to security and revision control. It can be part of your workflow if you have document capture as a first step. You can include a note right here and there. We also have an enhancement here called the VALU enhancement, short for validation and auto lookup, that lets me validate lookup based on some of the keywords I may have typed in and validate that information and pull back other keywords to populate it, maybe with entering only a short thing here. If I were to look at how that works, if I've got a customer order here, maybe I have a customer order of something like 84, I can look it up and it produces a little list of options for me by looking it up in a database somewhere, and I can choose the thing that I want, double click on it, and you'll notice I've taught it and told it to bring back all these other keywords from my open order file. And now I can save this thing and move on. So it can be that simple when it comes to tagging documents. There's also another option in here called Quick Tag, that if I engage it and I'm using searchable PDF as my input, I can point and click at the various things on the printed page as a method for populating these keywords as well. So if I were to clear this, and let's go here and engage Quick Tag, I can say, I just want to grab that as my customer name. I don't know, my customer number isn't on here, but here's a PO number and so on and so on and so forth. And I can just point and click all my way down. And again, I have an opportunity maybe to fill in all those keywords without ever touching my keyboard. So both the Quick Tag and the database validation, as well as a remote control capability that's available to programmers, all come with that value enhancement. So that value enhancement is an add-on special thing that we do. Contact Dash and we can help you with that if you need it. You'll know if you have it if you can see these two buttons up on the top of your screen, Quick Tag and Lookup. If you don't see those buttons and you want this sort of thing, give us a call and we'll give you a hand here. Let's go on and look at the web viewer here. This is a tool that allows me to see my documents in a browser which also means that if I want to be able to see those same documents in on my PC or my Mac or my iPhone or iPad, Android device, I can do all of that just by looking at it and going to the appropriate web page on my intranet, or if I have this exposed to the internet, I can make use of that too. But it does pretty much all the same kinds of things that you would expect and see on the desktop viewer through a browser. And again, if I want to see this as though it's on an iPad, very easy to do. There's my iPad. I can shift and look at. So here we go, and I can do whatever I need to do on that particular device. What I wanted to talk to you about today is that you've seen in the WorkWise system on many of the workbenches, there's a little button up there that lets you click it to initiate a search into DDX for documents that are related to the purchase order that I happen to be looking at in the ERP system, or the customer order, or so on and so forth. Well, you can do this similar thing with the web viewer. It's very easy to create a linked search. And again, this is something you may need some programmers or web developers to work on, but it's easy to do using a URL. This URL definition of a URL is basically it's the address to a website, right? Well, if you use the URL that looks something like this, it looks a little bit confusing, but if you really break it down, I'm going to a particular server and I'm going to the Dash viewer, and then I'm passing in some parameters here that are going to initiate a search for me. Those parameters include things like, is this a quick search or an advanced search, right? Keyworded search. What should we search for? In this case, the lookup was order number 841. Which view should we use in DDX? Should it be a full text search, yes or no? Should we show all revisions or only the current revision, and so on and so forth? But that simple little URL lets me launch my browser and make that search happen. So you can build that into other web pages that you may have built internally on your intranet or elsewhere in order to automate those searches. Pretty easy to do, all well documented as a part of the web viewer. So something to keep in mind. Let's move on to workflow. DDX includes as part of the standard product, a capability to deal with simple workflow. It's not really rocket science. It's pretty easy. I just got a document or a series of documents that I need to move from place to place. Well, in my, I'm going to use a simple example here where an acknowledgement was created in the ERP system. It was archived in DDX. Some related documents have been archived as well along the way, and they've been linked to that acknowledgement. So if I find the acknowledgement, I'll see the linked documents as well. Now, the workflow part of this comes in where somebody needs to review that order acknowledgement and approve it before it goes to step 2, which is engineering review, before it goes on to the factory floor, and so on and so forth. So normally we print these documents out, maybe staple them together and put them on somebody's desk and wait and hope they don't lose them or sit on them indefinitely. With DDX, all of this stuff is available to find now or later or even in the middle of the process if your security setup allows it. So I'm going to show you how this works here in a moment, but a couple definitions first. When we talk about workflow, there are a million definitions when I talk to people about what that conjures up in their mind. In DDX terms, workflow simply means display a collection of documents that are in a particular state, right? They're approved or not approved. They've been approved by the manager here and they've been dealt with by engineering or by accounts payable or wherever it may be. That state can be expressed as the criteria that we use to display that particular subset of documents or that particular collection. So what are the criteria used there? Now, state can also be determined in a whole variety of different ways in DDX. It could be the existence of a value in a particular keyword. It could be looking at an additional record that's attached to that document, like a note record, right? Which is pretty popular way of doing that, and that's what we'll be using here in a moment. It could be the existence of a companion document somewhere. A quote, for example, is in one state until an order acknowledgement that references that quote arrives in DDX, and now the state of the quote is something different. So there's a whole variety of different ways to get creative with how you determine the state of something and change the state of something. So if we look at this simple workflow, the acknowledgement's there, the other documents have already been linked, and I'm gonna drop into this workflow here at the initial approval side of things. So let me go to my, nope, not my publisher. I'm gonna go to my document viewer, and I'm gonna select a workflow view, right? This is a view that contains the criteria I need and want to facilitate this particular workflow. And when I select that view, my display at the left changes a little bit to show me the documents that are awaiting approval by the manager. And I can just drill down to the ones that I want there. And here I'm looking at that order acknowledgement that was captured. And down below, I can see that there are other documents linked to this. So if I want to see the related quote, I can just click here, maybe the customer PO, maybe some correspondence. All of that is related to this particular order. Now, I like what I see, and I want to approve it and move it on to the next step. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a record to this document in the form of a note inside of DDX that says, all done here, go on to step 2. So I'm going to open up my notes window here. I'm going to add a new note and just pass on whatever text I want. Please process this, and I'm going to say move it on to step 2. And I'm doing this because of the way this particular workflow is built. It's not a requirement to do this, but a lot of people do. And the reason they use this approach to things is, I'm going to save my note. The reason they use this approach is it's very much like signing a document, right? There's a digital signature on this thing. It captured my Windows login, so I know precisely who did this. And there's a date and time stamp as well, so I know precisely when this was done as well. This is preserved then as a record attached to this particular order acknowledgement that lives on indefinitely with this order acknowledgement. So now that I've signed it and I've told it it's okay to move on to the next step, if I go refresh my view and back here and let orders are left under Bayside Bikes, I can see that order I was just working on, number 841, is gone. So it's no longer in my queue of things to work on. So step 1 of my workflow process, all done and accomplished. Well, where is that document gone? Well, really, it's not gone anywhere. It is still in DDX. It just no longer meets the criteria to be displayed in this particular view. Now it meets the criteria to be displayed in my engineering review queue. And if I open this guy up, I see I've really only got one document here, and I can go through that exact same kind of a process here and move it on to step 3, which is the end in this particular simple little workflow. But that document's been digitally signed and moved along its way into different queues, and different people may have access to these different views. So one person may not have access to that manager review queue, so they really can't for the signing and moving of that document unless they have security permissions to do so. All along the while, that document and related signatures, if you will, are all, let's look this guy up and do a quick search. There, I'm going to find the most current version. All the while, anybody who wants to peer in on this process that has security and privileges to go look at the order acknowledgement can see that this thing has been signed off by JVH on such and such a date, and it has not yet been signed off by the engineering folks. So it is still in process of that workflow. These things aren't lost on somebody's desk or stuck there. Other stakeholders in the process can view them if they have privileges to do so, and so on and so forth. So a simple process to mimic some of the paper flow that you might otherwise do, that gets the stuff off of paper and protected in that digital realm very early in its lifetime. That's the goal of DDX's workflow. So how did that all work? Well, it depends very much on a thing called a view in DDX. And we'll talk a little bit more about views in a few moments, but the aspect of a view that's of concern here is that a view contains, as part of its definition, some criteria that determines what documents will be displayed in that view. That can include security things like show me all documents or show me specific divisions, and then within a division or company code, only specific document types, maybe other limitations there as well. But you can, in addition to that, inject SQL code or SQL code to further limit what can be seen. And that is a technique that was used in the example I just gave you to say, look at that attached record or that note record, and look at that numeric value to see if it was in step 1 or 2 or 3 or wherever. That determined which views it shows up in. So that criteria is something that you can build in as you see fit. And I think many of you, at least with more recent versions of DDX that have been more recently installed, may actually have some examples of this as standard views in your system. Some examples of the way the state of a document might change, again, attaching that record, maybe use a keyword, maybe you join to some external data, right? That order acknowledgement has as one of its keywords the order number. Well, you could use that to join into the WorkWise database to find maybe the status on the actual order over there. And then use that in your criteria and decision making for what should appear in this particular view. You could, as I mentioned earlier, use the existence of a companion document, or you can get even more creative with it. So there's a variety of different ways and approaches you could take to determine the state of an individual document. How about some other kind of cool little tips here? Let's talk about check-in and check-out. Let's say I've got a document in my DDX archive. I can see it right there, but I want to make a little bit of a change to it. I can always extract a copy and make some changes and then run it back through the publisher and reapply all those keywords, and I wind up with a new revision of that particular document. But it's easier than that in more current versions of DDX. For example, I can open a document, make that edit. I need to save it back to a watch directory, and I put that directory over here to the right because it's a very specific directory on your DDX server that if you save it back there after having done this, it will know what this thing is. It will know what document it originated from and use those keywords with today's date and time to put it back in and there as a new revision. So it becomes very simple for me to create a new version of that document. For example, if I, let's just do this once for you. I'm going to go to this quote, and I have here saved in my DDX a PDF form that I can fill in. I just need to click the Open Document button, and it will pop a copy out and launch whatever Windows thinks is the right tool to view and edit this in. In this case, it's a PDF, so it launched it using Acrobat. I am going to make a change here and say, ship to Jim's house. And I am going to save this as a document into that folder, right? The doc incoming pending folder. All done. And you'll notice it's got this really funny, weird sort of a file name to it. Well, that is the way that we can relate this back to the document inside of DDX that was the original of what we opened in the first place. So I'm going to save that there. I'm going to exit out, and it might take a minute or so. Nope, did it really fast. Here is the new version that I'm focused on. You can see it says ship to Jim's house, and I have the old version here that was as it was before I checked it out and checked it back in. Very simple to do. Let's look at another one. there is built into DDX now an electronic stapler that lets me link any document to any other document that I have access to. Now, this is a secured activity, so not everybody can do it, but if your DDX administrator has enabled this for a particular user, they can select one document as your target and then navigate to any other document or documents that they want to link, and it creates this sort of a peer relation. We saw this a little bit earlier when I was looking at the workflow. I was able to select the order acknowledgement and see the list of documents that have been linked to it. When I click on anything on that list, the display changes and shows me that document without really moving my focus away from the order acknowledgement, or in this case, the supplier invoice that I've got. If I were to go and, for example, find the purchase order in this example here, I would also see that this invoice would appear on its list of linked documents. So it's not a parent-child sort of thing, it's a peer sort of a relationship. The list is also limited by security. So if for some reason I didn't have access to AP checks in my example here, I would not see AP check on that list of linked documents to tempt me to go poking around in places that don't belong. Now we've also left this open for programmers to build those links as well. So the interface is open there. And in fact, we've had our guys on a few occasions build things that will link together documents that are related to a particular customer order, or like this example here, using information from the WorkWise ERP database, we're able to take a particular invoice or a purchase order and find the check, find the receiver, find the PO, find the invoice, and make sure all those links are built automatically. So there's ways to automate it, but we also give you a way of linking things in the document viewer. Again, anything to anything else you want. So it's not necessary that they have any relationship at the keyword level. As long as you know there's a relationship, you can make that link and you can make it happen yourself. I'll show you more in a little while on how to learn how to do that. Another tip, custom tailoring. You can add your own document types in DDX as well. We ship with 25 or 30 out of the box that we hope are pretty useful. Certainly all the ones that are integrated with the WorkWise product today. But there are some additional ones like customer POs that you would expect companies like you all would have and use. But we don't have a corner on all the different kinds of documents you might use. So we give you the ability to create your own. You can give it a name, you can tell it, is it revision tracked? And then you can describe the list of keywords that are used for that particular document type. Each keyword gets a description that's the external thing that the user would see, and gets mapped to an internal database column. That's where the data would be stored. You can decide what type it is. Is it a number? Is it alphanumeric? Is it a date, etc.? Is it something that's required? So if I'm putting this thing away in the DDX.Publisher, am I going to force the user to enter something there? How big is it? Is it 2 characters or 10 or 50? Right? You get to decide that. And should we present the user with a lookup list or a little drop down of options that they can choose from when they're in the publisher? So you have an opportunity to create your own document types to suit your organization and your organizational needs. You can also custom tailor your own DDX views, right? Like we saw before with the workflow stuff, that's kind of built around having unique views with unique criteria that let you determine what you're going to see. Well, there may be a whole variety of ways or reasons that you want to see your collection of documents in different orders and different ways. And you can do that by creating a view. You give it a name. That's what appears on that little drop-down list here that you see on the document viewer. That's the view name. You give it the criteria for what to display. We talked a little bit about this earlier. This is the way security is initially administered, by limiting what people can see in a particular view and then limiting the views that they can use. the other thing the view does is it determines the folder hierarchy, right? You decide which keywords you want to use for that folder, and the order in which they should be displayed. That's really the column name in which that data is stored. Or you can use SQL code to make that happen as well. It just needs to be legal in a SQL where clause. We've seen people do some kind of creative things like this, like, I want to see everything by customer name, but I've got so many customers, it's just kind of a nightmare to walk through all of those folders. Well, let's just strip off the first character, right? And if it's an A, then that's great. We'll just show a folder with the A and another one B, and another one C, and so on and so forth. And then underneath the A, we'll show all the customers that start with the letter A. And a little bit of SQL code that strips off that left character and displays it could be one of your folders as well. You can also make use of internal fields like, let me look at the date that they were added to the DDX archive, not the document date, but the date that the document actually showed up in the archive. And I can do that sort of stuff by, this is the one I just did today, right? And if you were to look at the keywords here, well, one of those keywords is the date published. That's the date I'm using in this particular hierarchy here. And the cool thing about building the folders this way is that you could decide, after using DDX for 2 or 3 years, you want to see your collection of documents displayed in a little bit different way, in a different hierarchy. You can do that. You just create a new view with a different hierarchy or set of keywords built into it. And as long as the documents you've been collecting over the last few years have all of those keywords to support that new hierarchy, all your collection just kind of falls right into place and allows you to do things as though they have always been in those virtual folders, if you will. There's more information. Again, I'll share with you on how you can learn how to do this stuff. And that more information can be found at Dash TV. There is on our website a section of our website devoted to short little training videos, and some of them fall into how do you use like the viewer? What are the mechanics? Give me a 10-minute or 12-minute walkthrough. And maybe in that case, we've peeled off a couple of the smaller things like, how do I staple documents together, right? That's a little 2-minute video that is related to the viewer, but maybe not embedded in the longer 10-minute, 12-minute video. So if you've got a new employee who doesn't know how to use the viewer, or you've got an existing employee who really would like to see a refresher, send them to Dash TV and they can get at this and get a real quick little education on how things work and what they can do. There's maybe 15 or 20 different videos out there for you to choose from. Some of them are those training videos, the mechanics and how-tos of a particular component within DDX, the viewer, the publisher, stapling and so on and so forth. Some of them are more administrative, right? You want to learn how to set up a workflow or create a view or a new document type. Well, all 3 of those topics are covered in a 2-part session on creating workflow. So that one takes a little bit longer. I think it's maybe 35 or 40 minutes. But it gives you a good smattering of the mechanics involved and the preparation involved in making those things happen. There's a couple conceptual videos, like how DDX may work for you in the accounts payable area without being very specific about the mechanics. And then there's some full webinar overviews, right? I mentioned at the beginning of this session today that if what you really wanted was a DDX overview, a big picture, there is up on Dash TV a 35-minute DDX overview that's kind of soup to nuts, the types of things that you would want to see if you wanted to just get kind of the big picture from front to back. A ton of specific detail, but it explains what DDX is. You look at what it looks like from the driver's seat perspective, and it's a great place to start if you're not familiar with DDX at all or little. You can get to Dash TV a number of different ways. You can go to dashdev.com/-tv, and you can go to support and informational videos, and you'll find the list of all of those videos here, and just click on one, and it will take you to that page, and now I can watch that video. Another way to locate those videos is just go to the viewer or the publisher or any of those, go to the help menu and go to Dash TV, and it will take you to that same place. Dash TV is at your fingertips for refreshers, for new employees, for all sorts of reasons. Good idea just to review it. I mean, you may have some kind of cool capabilities at your fingertips that you never knew or have forgotten about, and maybe it could solve the next problem that crops up at your business. So last tip for you, upgrade. It's very simple to do. Anybody who has a subscription to a support and upgrade protection plan, which is almost everybody, has access to a website called dashdev.biz. From dashdev.biz, you can download service packs that you can install that will give you the latest and greatest DDX, whether it's a simple hop from the version you're using today that was set up 6 months ago to the current version, or whether it's a full version upgrade from like version 7 DDX to version 8 DDX, which version 8 is on the street. It's been out there now for a little while, and that's what I've been showing you today. So we have built this service pack installation process, so it's pretty simple to do. Most folks who can use the internet, download a file and run a program, can accomplish this task in 15 to 30 minutes. It's just not a really big deal to keep yourself current on the software. And the instructions are right there. You can't actually get to the point where you download something without scrolling past the instructions on how to do it first. If you don't have the time or the inclination, or you need us to walk through it with you again, that's okay. Give us a call. We do install service packs for people for a flat fee that is over and above normal support, but you can do it yourself too. So it's your call. I really like this quote because I think it says a lot, right? Knowledge in and of itself isn't power, but sharing knowledge is power. And so what I would encourage you all to do today is to take the information that you've learned today, share it with others in your organization, squeeze the most out of the stuff that you have, and make your organizations the best they can be. And along the way, if you have suggestions on how we can be better and we can serve you better, please don't hesitate to share those with us. Send us suggestions, give us a call, drop us a line at ddxsupport@dashdev.com. If you need help with something or if you have suggestions, there's a bunch of people here that pay attention to that, and we will take note, I promise you. So with that, I'm going to open it up to any questions that anyone may have, and I'll do my best to answer them, or if I can't right now, we'll set something up offline to do so.
Very good. Thanks very much, Jim. This was really a helpful set of tips and new capabilities that I'm hoping each of you on the line is able to begin leveraging and go even more paperless and streamline your processes. We did send a little suggestion that if you have questions, please submit those using the question. And we had a number of questions that came in. I'm glad we've got a couple of minutes here before the end of the hour for Jim to address these questions. So I've got about 5 questions here, actually 6 questions here altogether, Jim. First one, is the web viewer automatically available on the public internet?
No. The web viewer is initially set up to be available on your intranet, and frankly, that's the way that most people use it, is a mechanism internally. but you can set it up in a manner that exposes it to the outside world. It remains protected. User login and ID, so not just anybody can get at it. So it's still secured, but it can be seen outside your firewall if you set it up properly. We'll be happy to work with your network and web people to make that happen if that's what you want to do.
Great, thanks. Next question: will the form recognition module, and that's DD export, does that interface with other systems like CAD or shipping systems?
Oh yeah, it can. It's very system non-specific. So if you had a shipping system that was spitting out bills of ladings, for example, and you wanted to capture them as they're being spit out, you could train DD export to recognize them and then just print from that shipping system and print them to DDX, and you would be good to go. So yeah.
Great. So you do it through the printing to DDX. Yeah.
Printing to DDX, or if you've got systems that produce and can save as a searchable PDF, you can save them into a watch directory on the network and you're good to go. When you're using the form recognition engine with a browser, that's the better approach. Save it as a PDF rather than use the print driver. Print drivers ours isn't unique in this fashion, but print drivers have an issue creating searchable PDF output from browsers for reasons I don't particularly understand. So that's why you see so many plugins in that realm.
Very good. Thanks. Okay, next question. Is there a limit to the number of steps in a workflow process? So I presume this is having to do with the thing you were describing around setting up a workflow in the archive viewer.
Yeah. Nope, there is not. But we would encourage users to keep it relatively simple. We've designed it with relatively simple processes in mind. And we've seen people build workflows that build out to 7, 8, 9, 10 steps throughout them. And you can do that. There's no system limitation to doing that. But it requires you then to coordinate those things and make sure they're all in a line. And so we tend to refer to it as simple workflow for that reason.
Very good. Very good. Another question related to workflow. How can I make sure approvals are only from certain people?
Oh, that's easy. If you're using the technique that I showed you here today, adding that record or that note to the document, you'll notice it was digitally signed. It has my login ID as the person who added that particular thing. So you can build that into the criteria of your workflow to say, you know what, it needs to have been moved on to this step by this particular individual. And then you are being very precise about who gets to sign them and who doesn't.
Very good. Okay, another one that came in here. In the Dash Publisher, can the date the document was created be shown, similar to Windows Explorer?
No.
Maybe it's more in the document viewer. I think you did show how you could have the date that it was published be showing up.
Yeah, we pick up the date that it was published. We don't ask any for just the date it showed up on the doorstep of the archive.
I'm sorry.
There is separate from that.
Jim,
separate from that.
Hold on. You're
I'm sorry.
Kind of garbled. Can you just repeat what you said? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that. The date published is a system date. We don't ask anybody for that date. It just gets picked up based on the date and time that the document showed up on the doorstep of the archive. So that is a thing available to you once the document's archived. The document date is something separate. That's something that you can set in the publisher. If you're talking about the date created of the file itself as the file attribute that you would see in Windows Explorer, that's not displayed in DDX, but if you oftentimes, if you click the open button, it will open that document up in, again, whatever Windows thinks is the appropriate thing to view or edit it in, and you can find it in the properties of that file. If it were a PDF, for example, Acrobat will show you that if you look at the properties of the Acrobat file.
Very good. Thanks. One last question here. Where can I learn more about adding specifically document types and views? I presume this is about the viewer.
Oh, yeah, sure. If you go to Dash TV, there is it's in here somewhere. Document types, views, and workflow. There you go. This is a two-for set of videos that talk about the end game here is to set up a workflow. But in order to set workflow up, you need to talk about document types and how to set them up, and views and how to set them up. And the preparation and organization and execution of all of those things is discussed in these couple of videos here. So that's all available on Dash TV.
Great. Excellent. I think that was all of the questions that came in. So to kind of wrap up our webinar, again, thanks everyone for participating in this. We hope you found it helpful. So as a next step, if you need more information, certainly you can, as Jim identified, check out Dash TV to drill into more of these topics. Or if you need help, feel free to contact Dash. If you are interested in adding any of the additional functionality that Jim showed here today, I mean, a lot of the functionality you already have, the stapling and the folders and approvals. But if you're interested in the value enhancement for the quick tags, that's something that can be added easily. Also, the Dash web viewer can be added. And then, of course, DD export is an optional module that could be added. If you're interested in more information about those, please just get in touch with your WorkWise sales rep, and they can assist you with that as well. So, Jim, any other final comments?
About it. I appreciate your attendance today, and I hope this helps. If you got any questions, you could certainly contact us about any of this as well.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Jim. Great job. And thanks, everyone, for participating. We'll see you on the next webinar. Have a great day.